On Senator Esslinger. Why don't we go around the room and just introduce yourselves? Start back there with the extension office.
My name is Krista Tate. I'm the county engagement specialist in Douglas County, and also specialist in Douglas County.
My name is T. Springfield.
Scott Avery with the City of Houston. I'm the city administrator and I also oversee our new ISP.
Mike Gardner, Ozarks Lot 5. Richard Ingalls, like Laura Ingalls. I'm a consultant with them.
Little House on the Prairie.
Little House on the Prairie.
I'm Chris Moody with MCTA, the Internet Television Association.
Dr. Dalton.
Aaron Dalton, I'm superintendent of schools here.
Travis Smith, state rep.
That's right, state rep.
Well, the purpose, what we're doing today too, is basically we've had 2 meetings in Jefferson City already. And what I really like about Lewis is chairman of this committee. He's also worked with Discover the Ozarks, which was a tourism group. And I believe Ava was one of the only towns that showed up on that one.
They're the ones that stepped up and did it out.
Many moons ago. So Lewis wanted to come down here. And our purpose today is kind of talk about where we are now and where we're going. And because there are so many different areas in the state where internet access varies so greatly. And one of the things, the challenges we run into here in the Ozarks is through how many hills and mountain ranges and rocky terrain we have and stuff too. I've talked to Gardner before about doing some of the wireless internet and stuff too. But that's what we're going to talk about today. Lewis is much more of an expert than I am, so I'll turn it over.
I'm not an expert. Thanks for setting that bar high. Just want to say thank you to everybody for coming out. What we're doing with this committee, our speaker, Rob Vescovos from Jefferson County, they don't have the best internet service in the world either. So ask some internet committees and also chair some policy development pockets, House Republican pockets, basically killing 2 birds with 1 stone. I've been working on broadband now since 2016, and that whole thing started with Hannibal, Northeast Development Partnership, Northwest Roundtable sat down together in 2016, right in the middle, 36 on Brookfield, and basically spent the morning complaining, this, woe is us. In the afternoon, we basically sat down and said, okay, now what are we going to do about it? So like 5 things up on the board to discuss, and first thing we seized on and everybody agreed was the major pain in the neck was broadband. We didn't even really talk about it and other stuff because the conversation went to broadband, stayed on broadband. So what this committee is designed to do is go around the state and take testimony from folks out in God's country, and not just in Jefferson City. So we want to hear from folks who are out there dealing with this every single day, live it, as opposed to folks coming in basically to Jefferson City and paid to testify. So we took the show out on the road. Travis is a member of that committee. I was really proud of Travis. We had a visual aid the last time we had a hearing. It was the FCC map that showed brilliant green, all of Douglas County. Your suburbs. Hallelujah. And Travis Lloyd got up and he went to the map and said, this is Douglas County. It says we're not. And I'm like, okay. Well, it's true. So one issues we deal with is mapping. One of the other issues we deal with is speed. That's sort of the universal constant around the state. And the third obvious one is access itself. So there are folks out there, we talked to the school superintendent yesterday in Springfield who had some students who had basically no access whatsoever. Pandemic rolls in, flip the switch, we're all remote now. The hotspots aren't going to work if you don't have a cell phone signal. So Lori had some students who were not able to do anything, any consequence at home, because they didn't even have a cell phone signal that was worth latching onto for purposes of the internet. So we're just going around the state. What we ask people to do is not just your testimony, but we have anything in writing. So pick this up yesterday. It doesn't have to be this elaborate. It can be a one-pager. It can be a brochure advertising what services you have. But we're really looking for things we're going to put into our report. We're charged with preparing the report by the end of this calendar. Want to make sure that we have as many things in there, not just for the committee members to consider, but for the entire House of Representatives to consider. Also public facing. So all the artifacts we can lay our hands on, we'll put those into the report. It helps us as policymakers, it helps us as appropriators. So at this moment, we have a $250 million request in front of another House committee that's dealing with the federal, the ARPA funds. And our state fund is returning an investment of $7, basically following capital for every dollar invested. Industry standards, 3.5, 4-ish, somewhere in there. So literally that state fund is giving us double bang for buck of what we're getting from the feds. A lot of money coming down from the feds, but we have to basically get in line to figure out how to appropriate our share. We want to make sure that we're adequately covered on that. So $250 million basically becomes $2 billion if we're able to keep that thing going. So that's what we're trying to do here is get testimony from everybody. We'll have the next two in Jefferson City, August 16th. You're welcome to dial that up. We can live stream those. The next one after that will be September 14th, their veto session. We're all in the building. We'll have another one in October. We're planning to do that. Circle back around. Folks we haven't heard from yet or areas we haven't really explored as deeply as we could. Digital literacy. That's something we really haven't had a statewide conversation about. We need to talk more digital literacy. You've got it, but you don't know how to use it. And that's a problem for seniors, for telehealth resources. It's also a problem for folks who are looking for jobs, who just aren't sure how to navigate the internet. So that's a thing. We talked about that extensively in the city, urban areas. It's much more of a concern with them, with seniors everywhere. It's a concern because of the telehealth process. So we're going to kill lots of birds with one stone. You keep telling folks we get one chance to do this right. All this money flowing at us is once in a lifetime event. And we need to basically make sure that we, as policymakers, appropriators, we need to make the internet universal out to all. So before we go any further, is Senator Carl Aswin here. Come on down.
I think I know most of them. Right here. Next.
Richard Ingles.
Richard Ingles.
Known Mike since high school.
Oh, okay. Were you in high school with Mike?
Yes.
Okay, then I should know.
Carla.
Oh, I'm good, I'm good. I'm Carla Essinger. I do know everybody. I was heard West Point.
Mike Haynes, we've talked to
Mike,
with
yes.
AT&T.
Yes. Okay. And the Let Singers, they adopted me a long time ago, because people got us confused with Best Singer and Let Singer. So I just claimed it. Anyway, hi guys, I'm thrilled you're here. I know it's a small group, but I want to first say thank you to Representative Riggs. He has taken this on for the last 3 years. He's been the champion in the House. He's the people of the Senate we look to say what's going on, where can we help. And of course, Travis has done an excellent job as your representative, and I support him 100%. And I'm just thrilled that he's taking this on as well, because I do believe that this my district, which is the 33rd, we have 5 of the poorest counties in the state out of the 8 that I represent. And one of the reasons is because we don't have some of that infrastructure that we need. Portable, accessible. Thank you.
And we're zooming this, so
I'm good.
we're gonna.
No, I'm.
You sure? Well, if you change your mind. All right, we had a hand up. So. Have a plan one there. We're also putting one at the top of the block. So, and we've got one at St. Louis coming up there this month. Station. Already had one. State Representative Randy Railsback, my seatmate, also was at that meeting in 2016. So he's very much up to speed on that. Green Hills Regional Planning. So we've got some really good folks, houses, always go back northwest. Your colleague Senator Hagan has been the absolute rock star when it comes to funding the state farm. And had a little hiccup in 2019 where it wasn't going to get funding at all. Well, Senator Hagan took care of that. So it's been a stalwart. So we've got some really good folks. You know, some of them get it, just trying to figure out how to fund it. If you got a one pager, case studies, white papers, anything like that, something that's simple. It gives us some information. Basically, what we're talking about in terms of speed, we're talking about affordability, price points, and coverage areas. That's fine.
Are you wanting to, like, collect a lot of letters from the
Sure.
road with the internet service? We have collected some that we consider on the.
Yes, we put that basically in that, and it's, that deals with some regional, I get phone calls from all over the state. People know I do that, and it's like, oh yeah, my internet's this, my internet's that. We had a meeting down in Perryville where the second person up, like, yeah, my internet provider's in the room, my internet, I'll clean it up for you, it isn't as good as it should be. It was very, a little more direct than that, and we had sort of a, how do we say, a moment where folks were, fortunately, there was another state rep there from the area that was like, I'm sure nobody threw punches, but folks are frustrated. We get that. And we had, for instance, from one county basically has no meaningful access at all. So University Extension's gone into that particular county and done a lot of good work, pulling people together, stakeholders, trying to get some sort of consensus about where things would be. My area, we sat down June, decided action step we need to take as a steering committee for the Northeast region. We met once already. Our goal is universal access. Question is how do we get there? So that's, we have a stakeholder engagement piece, but we're also taking exactly what you're talking about, emails, phone calls, whatever, following those from folks who say, hey, I don't have. I've got one, we had a teacher show up inside city limits of Hannibal who could not teach because she didn't have internet access. I don't know. It's like, well, how do we do that? Well, it sort of defeats the purpose of working from home, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's true, and that's something we've seen that trying to accelerate. We've seen telehealth, some of the providers, 1,500% increase in telehealth. So it's not just about COVID, it's about if you're sick, you got the cold, you got a flu, you don't need to be around other sick people. Or well people who aren't sick yet, going with somebody else. For us in there, I'm sure it's a problem down here, is transportation costs rural areas. We're insane. And then trying to get that, the doctor into the home is something we've authorized that as a state in 2016. We just need to put the pieces of the puzzle together in order to make it happen. So we got a lot of work to do. That's what this committee is all about, is trying to put those pieces together.
Just curious about, I know that you guys have a report that you do after this intro committee meetings. I think you said early, but I'm curious as to the structure of the report. So it'll be all of this information that comes together, and then the committee itself is able to summarize that, and then will the committee have recommendations?
Yeah. And we're going to try and narrow the recommendations down 4 or 5. And you know how that works. If you've got 15 things out there, maybe 4 or 5 will get done. So rather than, chase rainbows, we're going to have to do something that's really practical. I think part of that will be our state broadband office. And we need a real live office, 4 or 5 people. We passed legislation last year, it's HB 1768. Part of that was accountability piece, where internet providers getting money from the state fund. They're not doing their jobs within 3 years, you get the money back. So it's something we want to benchmark this. We don't want pie in the sky. We'll get to 5 years. We want this out. And that's something we'll have as part of those recommendations is, affordability piece of it, competition. But, for us, sure in this area, talked with folks in this area before, simple access is the problem. Somebody there goes like, yeah, I'd love to have service that goes out once a month. At least it would be. So, Ozarks topography, geography is not really easy to string fiber up. So I will shut up now and
One
Travis
of the
can
things,
moderate.
well, one of the things we talked about too was using local carriers, because Skyline School is a great example. Skyline doesn't have the high-speed internet. To get it, installation cost was about $400,000. Okay, we found that through Monet, but even after we found the money for the installation, it was hard for us to find any providers because those lack of providers, not the lack of providers, but lack of people for those providers to make an income off of just wasn't there. And that's one of the most frustrating things where we live. We're so sparsely populated. I understand why some of these carriers don't want to come in because they can't make money. And what's frustrating, we talked about the map earlier about how the government map shows Douglas County as one of the best served counties, not only in Missouri, but in all the nation. And that's because it was based on census data. And the census data showed the majority of people in Ava had it. Well, that's where the majority of people live, where 95% of the geography, like where I live, we can't even get cell service. Because even if you had 5G, we weren't going to be able to get it. Right now, there are so many things the federal government's doing, for instance, knocking people's bill down. There's out there something in the new infrastructure bill, a $50 credit for people low income housing. I'd rather make some of that where, hey, we provide some of that to the providers and give that to them because they're out there putting that infrastructure in, and so they can make some money off it. That's what it's about, making money. Some of my conservative brethren I work with, the co-ops, I wish the co-ops, there's 40 co-ops in the state of Missouri. 8 of them are doing this. The other 32, I understand. I think White River said in order to do it was going to cost them over 300 million. Allergan Electric said over 40. So basically what I've come up with right now is using local providers. And what I'd like to do is use this second round of the CARES Act or whatever the Biden's called this time around and use that as a match, not a grant. I believe in matches because matches, everybody's got some skin. And use that with some of the wireless internet service providers. Mike, you know a little bit more about that business than I do, but please explain how that works.
Well, we're on a low one, so for us to get it, we'll have a good amount of time. And it is really challenging, especially older. You have to have high spots. For the expense of the tower, you have to have people you get on it.
How much do those towers cost a piece?
Right now, just what was it, 190-foot tower. It's 90, not maybe 90.
90,000.
Or if you have the space for that.
At 140. That's not counting.
Right. I'm just gonna say for now to make it easy, about $1. Basically, so it could be not $1. Yeah, not $1.
Real quick, could we have each person in the audience who's speaking stand up and get closer to the mic? Thank you.
They have to step this direction.
Come up this way.
All right.
Thank you, Jeff.
She already talked.
Let's explain that one more time.
I think the 190-foot tower, we had a quote for it's around 90,000 per guided tower. I think it's 140,000 for self-supporting. And I think was equipment a minimum. Do you remember, Heather? Yeah, 10 to 20,000 for basic equipment. Service probably maybe what 200 people, I think.
Walk us through how the network itself operates. Have the power that's
Well, the guy who usually sets that up is Jerry, so I'm not.
That's okay. I mean, we don't have to get totally tech to this. Okay.
I'm the tech nerd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the camera.
Talk to her.
There's two
Talk to
ways
them
to
tonight.
support the infrastructure for a tower. One way is to get a fiber plug-in, so with Show Me Fiber or one of these other carriers like that, support that. The other way to support a tower is what we call the air fiber. We send a signal from one tower to the other tower. So there's two different models, and probably the best working model in our area is a hybrid of the two. So wherever you can get a tower that has a fiber, what we call a backbone, that's provided by Show Me or somebody like that, you want to use those. You want to use those as much as possible. But where you cannot get one of those, then you use the tower to shoot a signal to another tower. Basically, that becomes your new, not fiber, but air fiber link to this other tower. And from that tower, then we can shoot to places where somebody like Show Me or CenturyLink or who else is Fidelity won't go. Does that make sense?
And then another thing, past that, also have like a digger truck, like the power company has, so we put our own poles in. So for example, down at my farm, we didn't have internet and no cell service, so we put a pole in, then we shot down the valley, hooked up the farmhouse, a few renters hooked up, and then my Airbnb cabin. So we was able to shoot down the valley with other lower frequencies like 900. That was kind of hidden from everything else, which worked fine down there. So we can repeat. Shoot down.
So you have unique challenges here in the Ozarks with our hills and the trees.
Yeah.
So because of the rocks in the ground, putting fiber in the ground is very, very difficult to do. Because of the trees everywhere, shooting a wireless signal becomes also a challenge. And so what's the solution in the wireless world is, well, we can just blast it with more radiation, right? Higher power. The higher the frequencies go, the less strength you have to penetrate through leaves. So wintertime, we're great, right? But once spring hits and leaves are there, you have to have a signal that's strong enough to penetrate through all those things to get to those people. So what Mike has is a really unique hybrid solution, and that is that he can put up poles, underneath the tree line, or we can get just above them with his poles that he can place everywhere. So you don't need to have a tower at every single location. That's very, very costly to build.
Well, like
The
actually,
poles-
we hooked up Thornfield School that way, and we're actually hooking up Skyline this week.
Okay.
And putting in, shooting internet from my house down where the tower is down there, so. And getting them going, so.
Have you ever considered talking to the co-ops about using some of their poles? What do they say?
Well, we're in the works with it. They're act like they're trying to work with us, like secondary poles we can. Some of their main poles, if we have another pole to set in, they're putting a meter on it, that we can power from their pole over. Voltage, wattage, I guess. So, but we're just trying to do whatever we can to hook up most people. And another thing I'm doing different, like down, for example, at my cabin, I had some old equipment can't buy anymore. I think I had 6 megs running to the cabin, which might not seem like much. But we had a fiber engineer up, tying some fiber into the bull, stayed at the cabin. And he made me ask me, he says, who's your internet provider? I don't know. I know he's a fiber engineer. So you think all this big high speed, well. And he told me, he says, me and my wife both do this, and we're on your internet. We're both able to get on, do all our stuff, get an IPs, and set up everything. So we're just, usually for us to be able to do something, we got to be in Kansas City or something out in the rural areas. And he couldn't believe how good it worked. So I told him what we did. We don't oversell until you got 25 and you only have 1. So we get you 6 megs is what we had there. And you couldn't believe how great it worked. So when you start going from 6 megs to 25 and trying to do 100 megs out here, your equipment's so expensive, and you only have so much room on 2.4 and 5 gig to get the people. So you take up everything where the equipment's so expensive. Shoot yourself in the foot, you really don't even need it. People right now, we give them 6 megs and they think they went to heaven because they're actually doing Skype and Zoom calls and do their business and everything. So
And that's one thing Commissioner Ridge was talking about is a lot of times some of these big providers will tell you they're getting 25.
yeah.
When they're actually not getting 25 at all.
Oh, we
It's
hook up
much
so
like-
many people that's supposed to have 25. They do a speed test and it shows 25. But when they're actually using it as buffers on a YouTube video, I can give you 1.5 megs and not buffer on a YouTube video. So I give them 6 megs or 8 megs and they're running 2 or 3 TVs at once or Zoom calling, no interference, no button or nothing. So
That's why we're talking about some of the accountability with some of these companies, because there is no
Yes.
account. They're
That's the
getting
tech
billions.
nerd. Oh, I want to speak on that so people can understand, because there's a
Please.
common
Explain that.
misunderstanding about these numbers. And so I really want the politicians to understand it, but people need to understand it. They sell based on these big numbers. They're going to tell you 1 gig or whatever. It's just like when you go to buy an airplane ticket, they oversell because they know there's going to be no shows on airlines, right? So the same thing is true with how internet service providers work. They sell more than they know they can service because they know that that's not really the number they're going to hit. It's a business, so they want to be profitable. We get that. But when you put a bunch of people on that line, what happens is when they do start all using the internet, think of it like plumbing. Suddenly, there's not enough water pressure anymore. Does that make sense? And so it's the same concept with the technology. What Mike does is he's different than a lot of internet providers, and that's why I like working with him, is he makes sure that when he tells you, I can get you these numbers, that's the number he can get you, and he's not going to oversell it. So when you go to flush the toilet, there's plenty of water pressure in the internet analogy. So for example, my own personal example is I was on CenturyLink and I lived just outside of West Plains, a few miles, not far. And so CenturyLink serves that area. I was paying for a 10 meg package, 10 megs of download and 1.5 megs of upload. And whenever I ran a speed test, it would show very close to those numbers. But in reality, my wife and I both do technology related things. We couldn't do it from home. We would literally have to go in to town to either her photo studio, she has a business in town, or my business that was in town, and use our internet there, because my internet out there was so bad because they oversold it. And here's the number that you never pay attention to that you need to pay attention to, because it matters more than your upload speed and your download speed, and it is your ping time. You don't know what your ping time is. That is the time it takes for your computer to say, hey, I'm out here, and for the internet to respond with, oh, I see you. That should be in milliseconds. It should be measured in small numbers, milliseconds. 100 milliseconds or less is a decent ping time. A great ping time is maybe 20 or 30 milliseconds. When I lived out, well, I still live out there, I had a ping time of, I want you to guess how great my ping time was with my 10 meg down and 1 meg up package. Anybody want to go into the hundreds?
200.
Let's try thousands. I was at the 4,000 to 6,000 millisecond ping time. What that means in real time is 6 seconds.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
my computer says, hey, I'm out here and I would like to do a Google search. 6 seconds later, the internet says, oh, I'm out here, and tries to talk to my computer. What happens is anything that's operating on the internet that waits that long, it's called a timeout. And so the internet says, nobody's out there. I'll just close this connection. Emails don't work, web pages don't work, YouTube.
Banking.
What's that?
Banking.
Banking, yeah, all of these things, they close their connection because it times out. And that's the number that everybody needs to really pay close attention to when these other internet providers come along and tell you, oh, I'm promising you 1 gig. Great, I want to know what my ping times are, because that's the important thing to know. If your ping times start going too long, everything you do on the internet times out. And for all intents and purposes, you have no internet. You'll remember the good days of the 90s when you had dial-up and think, well, I wish I had that again.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
it does.
So I'm sorry, I'm just the tech nerd.
No, that
Well,
was the
just-
best way to explain it. Thank you.
I was talking, about the engineer, he says like a lot of our systems might be set up for 5 megs, but then one person's like, well, I'm gonna give you 10, or I'm gonna give you 15 out to another person, but the system's only designed to handle 5. So if you have a TV and it sees what you have out there for what you call it'll eat up. If you give them 6 megs, it'll use 2 or 3, but if you give it 10 or 20, it's gonna eat it all up and get a higher quality, maybe a quality you can't even see with your eyes, but it's using up and then they can shut down the whole system.
We had one provider testified, so far the record, 27,
Thank you.
27 devices in one household using the internet. That's to that.
That's the new future.
2-3 years from now, that's going to be our new normal. So as this goes along, you ring doorbell and you're realize that there's MacBooks. Wonder why it's a little bit slower. It's because the Internet of Things, everything we buy now has something in it that's going to have the Internet. So I wanted to make sure that City of Houston, you guys have something rather unique at this moment. I wanted to give you opportunity. Anybody here is time bound needs to talk first. How are you doing? 20 minutes. Let's go ahead and hear from our school folks.
I stayed online listening to you guys the whole time.
Okay.
I'm here all the whole time.
Okay. Let's go ahead.
Well, so I just want to, I'm going to repeat the conversation that we touched on earlier, and I've heard a lot of examples of this. So I'm going to go back to spring of 20. School shut down, students go home, and we're trying to offer instruction virtually. So while we found lots of surveys, interactions with students and parents in that way, of course, in my mind, I know the vast majority of our households they've got smartphones. There's some type of internet access. So what we would see early on was 70+% of our students had access to internet. Now, as we get started and we're trying to deliver instruction, whether that's a video explaining the concept, actually logging in, completing work and turning that back in. Well, now we started adding a qualifier on that. Okay, how many of you have reliable internet? And you go from, we go from 70+% of our students and families having some kind of internet access to, hey, this number is more like 50-50 of families that have reliable internet that would allow them to participate in meaningful instruction. And I think I won't repeat the things we've already touched on. I mean, that's what we know. It's the hills, it's the dips, it's just the geography of our region is what we're running into. With the funding that was made available, we could buy hotspots for every family, but they're not worth anything. If I send a hotspot home with a family that doesn't have a signal, that hotspot's useless for them. And so that's why those are the issues we ran into just again through that forced shutdown and as we were trying to deliver instruction. So that on the school side, we have lots of conversations and we feel like, again, with the funding that's been made available, the things that we can control, we're trying to address. We don't control the infrastructure, that signal delivery to those locations. So that's, I guess, the school perspective there.
Been able to talk to area providers as far as talk about access, that's something. Had that conversation with the provider.
No, I will tell you, this meeting has been insightful even at this point.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
I mean, what we do, like in Older County, we're just trying to hook up what we can. So many people still couldn't get to doing that. I think it needs to be, honestly, I don't think it really in the long run, you need fiber. Right. Now, you get most people you can hook up, because it's not take a long time and money. For example, talking numbers maybe 20,000 per household. Per household is maybe need fiber if you're not co-op. So if you do that, then they're talking, well, only half of those people might sign up.
Right.
So now you're talking 40,000. Mistaken. Anyhow, if you bid on that, to put it in fiber, the prices change and everything, if you're off 10%, I mean, you're at $2,000 and then won't have people go through out $4,000, we'll never make that back. See, yeah, and plus the inflation things go higher, and you understand you get grants, you can't go back and say, my material's higher now. Something's got to be done different. Start on something and realize everything's out of range, stopping it. So like a lot of money, but ends was come here, there's no place to stop, but you can't do it.
Customer base, customers per square mile average.
Keep residents.
I think there's 4,500 meters down on how many households. Supposed to get those numbers. You start like having that, because we have a lot of rock. Well, like if you gotta run fiber, you got rock, it's like $30. But cut the rock plus your material, but you gotta put on poles, you already got they send you down on the pole. And if you're not co-op, you're co-op, you get closer to the power lines because it's certified. Now you gotta stay a certain distance, so you gotta go below them. Well, go below them, you gotta keep your ground clearance. And most likely, you're not gonna have ground clearance, so you have to install new poles. So you're gonna put a tall pole in, have it to your line. So you're talking $3,000 on the pole. Change it out, and then you're digging the rock. So it gets very expensive. Then you got one house, whatever, 2 miles or
And you have to
2 houses.
put that line to that house. So, but you're required to put internet. Keep it on like that. You put fiber to a house, that person would have to they don't want internet. They never had it on it. Now they have internet in their house.
That's working out now. It's talking to our realtors, is they'll want internet, it's not to sell that house. Because
Yeah.
they don't have.
Yes, that's true. That sounds like that house will probably want it.
Valuations for internet, houses that have access to internet between $7,000 to $10,000.
I get calls from realtors every day.
That's the number one question they're asking.
We have a case study, a real life case study of what project that was down at Thayer, so at Mammoth Springs, so right there on the border. A guy, a developer, a real estate developer, was realizing he couldn't sell, he was developing nice riverfront property, expensive homes that he was targeting for doctors and lawyers out of Memphis or St. Louis who want a nice kind of a vacation getaway down on the river. And he couldn't sell these lots because he couldn't get internet to them. And all those people said, well, we don't want to come down there. We don't want to spend the money if we don't have internet access. So it's
Yeah, we
real.
lost 2 cells.
Yeah.
Same thing in Rawls County, Missouri, Saberton, isolated right on the road. Same thing, realtors actually want to buy.
Yeah.
fiber to
But they was
sell
going
out.
to. Yeah, they lost $200,000 on sales.
We can get in that case that.
I just had a question about the region. Of course, I care about the state, but I really care about the district, the big counties and the bottom. And so I'm curious, I know we have like landscape analysis or some kind of audit as to who has service, who doesn't, what speed, to what house, to what school, to what business, what farm. But I'm curious about, is there anything regionally that they do as far as having an understanding of status? Where are we? Because it sounds to me like we have all these puzzle pieces of how to solve the problem, but unless you have a true understanding of that region, it's different than St. Louis, it's different than Columbia. What does this look like on the bottom part of the state? I'm curious if we have anything.
Some of our regional planning commissions have already commissioned studies or done studies. I've actually asked Bob, the state organization, to forward those. Not everybody, to my knowledge, has. So the RPCs are active in the space.
Yeah.
10 years ago, it changed. First time through, they were active in that space as well. So there's a track record there in history, but I haven't seen that everybody is doing that. So that's something. Our state broadband office, which reports one person office with 4 to 5 people in
I'd
it.
love to see a regional.
We could have that.
Because locally is where you solve the problems. I think.
Amen.
And so if we have an opportunity to have somebody who's an expert in what we live with every day, then we'll be able to solve the problems faster, instead of seeing if the state solution is going to fit. So that's just a.
From the state broadband fund perspective, those are matching funds. It's not a gift. You have to have skin in the beginning. They have a really good what's called challenge process, which is somebody walks in and says, oh, wait a minute, I'm going to serve this. Somebody else says, excuse me, we're already here. So we're trying to get the access out to people who just flat out don't have it. You find it, no access is 10, 1 or less. People out there don't have it at all. So the hierarchy needs basically unserved, that group underserved, which is under 25.3, then other, we'll get to them later because they have service already in their fund. But from the state perspective, that's something where we're trying, I think the lowest grant we've seen yet is $45,000 from the state fund. That's the real last mile access. That we're talking about folks who just flat out aren't going to get it anywhere else. That's what the state fund enables us to do. You don't have to go to the federal government, hire a lawyer, hire a consultant. And somebody told us yesterday, 140-page document to get into that particular game. We don't do that in the state. It's a lot more accessible, 100 times more user friendly. We just don't have a lot of money sitting there to get out to places like this. And that's what we're trying to do from a appropriations standpoint. So, and that's a really good question. We're going to have to work on that. So.
That's another reason too, we want to work with the county commissioners for the second round of monies they're getting. We just talked, Douglas County is getting $2.5 million. So we asked for 250,000, which is just 10%. They have lots of capital improvements they need to work on stuff too, but for $500,000, that build 3 or 4 towers just in Douglas County.
That's one thing too, I should probably mention this. I know 2 county commissions, in particular, my neck of the woods, who took CARES Act. So we're going to file that into Broadband. And I told them it's in 2 parts. Number 1, it's online education. Number 2, what we call the evergreen, it's just telehealth. That's only going to get bigger. It's going to get better. More people are going to access it. And that's something that's going to be strong as an issue. Online education, we don't know what that looks like. We prefer NC. We know that for folks who lost the year of education. But the telehealth part, it's going to be everywhere for the rest of our lives. So county commissioners, I've got it in Shelby County, my district, took half of their CARES Act provided in broadband internet because we got one of the 10 more served counties in the state. They're the 3rd oldest county in the state. So there are a lot more folks who could use that telehealth at home than other counties. And frankly, we had a really good conversation. They're doing it again. We're right back into the ARPA money, doing the same thing. Rawls County is the same way. Rawls County Electric is one of the co-ops that's been doing this since 2009. They took the shovel ready money back then. They were shovel ready, and they have been deploying fiber ever since. So there's some really good studies out there, folks who've been doing it well. But the county commissions have less money than the state, but more money than God compared to what we've ever seen. And so this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. This train goes by once. And if we're not on it, shame on us. That's I'm telling all the commissioners that. They're waiting for the final guidance. Well, the interim guidance said it's a priority, which means all things being equal, this is up here, the rest is down there. So I'm telling folks, you can only buy so many dump trucks and road graders. It's a depreciating asset. You need to put it in people. That's the internet. And the young people we all cry about, we do, they're leaving, they're never coming back. Oh, why are they leaving? Because we don't give them internet. They grew up with this stuff. I didn't. I'm 60 years old. This is new to them. It's all they have. So, sorry, that's my sermon. Jump in, Senator.
And this will be the last that I occupy the time, but the report that you all are preparing, I think, is very, very important. I think it'll have a lot of people, because you guys have done such a great job of gathering input across our state. But I would love to see within your report to look at each of the, even just the senatorial districts or maybe the rep districts or whatever, as to what is the, after all this input, what is the recommended next steps? How can you solve the problem in this county, that county, whatever, or this region, however that goes? If the report comes out that this is statewide, these are our recommendations, I feel like that my district may not fit that solution. So
Well, and one
If you
thing,
could do that.
University Extension's been working on is Bollinger County, Clinton County, so southeast and northwest.
Okay.
All right, so there are case studies out there already where in University Extensions, every county in this state, including St. Louis and Jackson County, they're already out there doing this kind of thing. There's already something out there called a resource rail that Mizzou has stood up. Basically gives you real-time mapping. It's better than anything the feds have got. It's not on the state quote unquote site yet, but we're working on it. And I think another component will be regional planning commissions are equipped to deal with everybody. They deal with every day of the week. They deal with state, they deal with federal, they deal with mayors, they deal with commissioners and counties. They deal with school districts. I refer to them as University Extension with money. they know everything there is to know. They know everybody who's out there, but they also know how to get at the money because they're training how to write grants and how to partner with folks who don't know how to write grants. Here's how we do this. So, I mean, that's something, you know, we're talking all hands on deck, but we do have some resources in place already. We just need to use better than we have. It needs to be in cohesion. We're just not there yet, but we're working on it. So thank you. And please email me your thoughts and
Yeah.
we'll get that in. You raise a very valid point. Every corner of the state's different. There's no cookie cutter. And I've been researching this for a while. There is no one state union yet that's solved it. Say, yep, let's do that. You know, we look at Tennessee, a lot of look at Indiana. We don't look at Kansas so much.
Vince pulls away.
Illinois is a joke. I look across the river from Illinois. We don't even look at them because that's just a horror story. But there's some states out there making significant progress. West Virginia is one that comes to mind immediately. That they have similar geography to what we have in this part of the state. Mapping's a big part of that. Stakeholder engagement's a part of it. Real time and legislative oversight's a real big part of it. Are you spending the money that you said you were going to the way you're going to spend it? So that's an evergreen issue as well. Where is the money going? What are y'all doing with it? And, you know, this 10 years out kind of stuff, we need it a lot quicker than that.
I want to toot your horn just a little bit, because I remember the day that you came to me on the floor and you were telling me how many millions of dollars we're going to lose as a state if we did not do, I don't remember exactly what it was, Representative Griggs, but it was something was happening that we we're going to lose some federal money if we didn't have a piece of legislation that rolled back to sunshine or rolled back, you remember this?
Yeah.
And he was the only guy that knew
Yeah.
about it. I mean, he saved us.
We took care of it.
Yeah.
It happened.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there are a lot of moving pieces out there that frankly, you know, we've got a state broadband office. And Tim Arbiter is our director. He's great. And he is all
wonderful.
over this every day. It's what he does. He loves it. He's really good at it. But we need to get him some help from a legislative accountability oversight. We need that piece. All this money that's going out, we need to be able to say, hey, where are you? And basically reel that back in. Folks aren't doing what they say they're going to do. It's money back. Somebody else will do it. Thank you.
And hopefully they don't tie up the money for years and years.
Wow. You know, we'll shoot straight with y'all and stuff. We've talked to providers all over the place. You know, some people are on back order for the fiber itself, which runs us 18 months. Other folks are looking at construction delays. Frankly, not enough people out there doing it. The demand is all over the country right now at the same time. 40 to 60 weeks. Beds on ARPA give us a 2024. You go 18 months from where we are now, we're 2020. So that's the reality. A lot of folks out there buying this stuff up. I talked to providers said, oh yeah, we were really lucky. Bottom budget. Not everybody's. So you're going to see hit and miss all over the state as far as who was in there first. You have the resources available that they can deploy now. Not everybody's in that space. So that's one of those ones. It's going to be a process that some areas are going to say, oh, wow, it's going to take a while. Others are going to just, we have to deal with that. It's just, those are the facts. So unfortunately, it is what it is.
And I can tell you by just research interesting, you're asking about different districts and areas and all that. That hybrid model that we just talked about,
Sure.
that is by far the way to go for right now. Because we can talk about doing some other stuff with the high-speed fiber and all that, but my recommendation right now is working against some of those ARCA monies and then doing the matching program. And the reason,
Oh, yeah.
well, the reason we like the match is because it's not a grant. What has happened with some of these grants we found out, these companies and some major companies got grant money but didn't have the financing to do the rest of the job. So they get this money, but then they can't finish it up. They have to give it back. And so the focus we want to have right now, just for helping out with the 155th district, is getting some of these wireless internet service providers going and stuff. Because like at our campground, it cost us not having internet or campground. There are people, we made a significant investment in an RV park, and there's people that won't stay with us because we don't have internet access to them too. And the cell phone, I'm telling you again, that's so great. I've even had people in there say, I've got 5G if they're standing on top of the mountain. When I'm on the side of my hill, we don't even have cell phone service and stuff too. It's just nothing. So I think that for right now, that's what I'm counting is the wireless internet service provider. Later on, if we can get these other things, most definitely. But my goal is, one of the things I've learned about being in Jeff is time is very limited. So we want to get things done as quickly as possible too. And the working with local providers, they've got skin in the game. We know who they are. You know, try sometime calling up a CenturyTel person, see how long you're on hold for. I truly believe in local providers because their reputation's on the line. You've got to see them at the grocery store. You've got to see them at Walmart. You've got to see them where you go out and stuff. So that's my 2 cents for right now.
He's a perfect example of solving the problem. They came up with this hybrid piece of, can't get a signal here, we're gonna lower it here, we're gonna pole, or what, I mean, I've seen it work, Mike, or, I'm sorry, Mike. And he does, and he truly does. I mean, it's his neighbors, it's who he goes to church with. Stands in line at Walmart with, so yeah, he wants to always do the best he can.
That's another thing I like to say is like, when we got into this, it's still really not, it's not about how much money you're gonna make. It's about providing on the internet, it's actually gonna work. And after you start getting feedback, people calling you randomly 2 or 3 months later, thanking you, saving them their business, or they're able to work from home now. And it gives you the drive to figure out how to make it work. And we still haven't put money from it.
Who do you want to?
Those are spot by Gainesville.
One thing we accomplished legislatively this year was to look at combining efforts across municipalities and cities, be able to go into broadband issues, create their own ability to get resources deployed in a timely fashion. That was based on something that happened in the state of Vermont years ago. As the federal rules, they had a provider, because Vermont's rather small, but it can relate to the geography of Vermont, our area. And a provider came in, fell flat on their face, was knocked out of federal dollars. So basically, they created that network out of dire necessity. Money wasn't there. So that's something that we got that through legislative this year. Don't know what that's going to look like as far as it's together. But Missouri is in a position where municipalities are actually out there. Things done now. How do you guys handle your situation?
So I was lucky enough to become city administrator, be 2 years next month. And I walked into my second meeting, the feasibility report on the broadband. So it was kind of dropped in my lap. I feel it's, considering that we started construction in March 2020, which everybody knows what happened in March 2020. I feel like we're really moving in the right direction. Some misconceptions that I'd like to share with especially the 3 of you is we're not using taxpayer money, we're using electric customer money. We're only offering broadband to our electric customers right now.
Through the city.
Through the city. Yes. So if you're an electric customer, which includes, I believe it's 11 people outside the city limits, because back in 1940, whatever, Intercounty wasn't able to connect these people easily. So they said, hey, city, can you connect them? We actually have 11 people outside the city limits that we give electricity. So these customers are being offered this broadband service. We do offer up to a gig service that we sell. We have 0.8 millisecond ping times. Is the worst I've seen. I've actually seen 3. So we're getting really good ping times. My fiber tech has 1 gig service at his house, and on a bad day, he's getting 986 up and 940 down. So, but at the same time, what he likes to point out to me as a computer geek is that our computers, like that computer there, can only handle a gig. So the most it can handle. It won't go above a gig. So getting 980 is probably the best it'll do because the cards inside of it are only built to stream through. And maybe you can explain that more if I didn't make sense.
No, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah. So
So-
you're saying there's no reason to, since it's at a gig.
And that's on the newer computers too.
Yeah, that's on the
older
newest
computers.
So when someone says I'm only getting 900 and something, the first thing I say is, what's your video card and how old is it? Because I think that's a very intelligent way of looking at it. But we're offering a 25 up, 25 down synchronous for $30 to our electric customer. I'm buying my hardware and my cabling on the open market. I just placed an order with Gray Bar, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with. So I'm buying the same place everyone else is buying. Only I don't have the buying power that they do. I have to negotiate and build relationships, and that's how I'm able to do it. The first mile, I know you guys have heard about first, middle, and last mile. The first mile is provided to me by two providers. And you guys have mentioned both of them in these various hearings. I'm paying $124,000 a year for that incoming internet, that first mile. So my operations costs are projected to be about $386,000 a year to it. And 130-ish of that is just to have the internet coming into my town. The interesting thing is we also pay the node. Does that make sense? I'm sorry. The node, which is where the fiber goes to for these companies. So there's a node in downtown Houston for the one, and there's a node over by the Justice Center, Texas County Justice Center for the other. The city paid for the construction to run that from their node into our building. So we've also paid for them to bring the wires into our building. So it's something where when I hear yesterday that it's unfair to let municipalities do this, I think it's just as competitive as everybody else. And anybody that wants to come into Houston, provide to my homes for less than I'm charging, put me out of business, I welcome them, I will help them. Because that's what it's about. It's about getting internet into these houses. My goal down the road someday, hopefully, if I can pull it off, is to provide that free internet to all electric customers at that 25 or whatever is needed at that time. That's where we would like to be as a service to our community, because the problem is, and you both mentioned it already, we've got people leaving town and not coming back. And how do we maintain that? Well, one of the things we're doing right now, we're pushing ourselves as the work from home town. We have a picture that we're getting ready to do an advertisement on, a picture of a house in Houston saying your office. And then we've got a picture of Dog's Bluff. We've got a picture of the valley going down towards Piney River. We've got a picture of people kayaking. We've got a picture of the hiking trails around us. So it's your office, the picture of the house, and your playground right outside your door. So that's something that we're pushing, because we're going to be able to provide them internet there in town. The questions become, and all this was done with electric reserve monies because we didn't qualify for grant money, because we're already claimed to be served. But I have yet to find a house that has fiber going to it that's not an at-home business. So I want to make that clear. There are some fiber at-home businesses. So we're trying to make a difference. We're trying to do it for our community. We're in phase 2 of 4 right now. We expect phase 3 to go out to bid next month. And when we're all done, we hope to have 600, 650 customers, but I think it's going to be more than that. Our take rate so far, with no marketing, we haven't done any marketing yet. Our take rate so far is about 65% without marketing. So we're hoping that goes up. And what's down the road? Well, down the road, once we have all of our electric customers taken care of, we're more than happy to assist with providing that fiber link to the tower that shoots down the valley going to Piney River, which I don't know. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am, but
So my water tower.
ours would be Norfolk River, Bryant Creek, but same
Yeah.
type principle.
Oh, the brewery, I'm sorry.
Right. Oh, I've never heard.
You can sit on the deck at the brewery and see my water tower in town.
Cool.
So what does that tell you about that valley?
Yeah.
You can probably service everybody down that valley. So that's the types of things that we're looking at down the road. But right now, our responsibility is to our customers,
Right.
which is who paid for this. But it's something that we're really trying hard to move forward. But what worries me is I constantly have to pay attention to the legislation that tries to make the municipalities not allowed to do it, which doesn't make sense to me. isn't it about getting the internet into that house?
That's why we need to hear this stuff. So thank you.
So my point to everyone I talk to is my goal is to make sure that single mom with 3 kids who's doing at-home education has internet. Because we opened up Wi-Fi's all over town, anywhere we could, to where mom could bring their kids to the parking lot. We opened up our tornado shelter so they had a bathroom to go to because no one was at the school because they weren't allowed to be there. You know, we did those things during this time. And that's what we're trying to do moving forward. You know, and like I said, anyone that wants to come in and compete with me, I will help them. Because it's about getting that fiber to those people who need it at their houses and the education. We're talking about doing a smart classroom and bringing in Fiber Broadband Association, doing a fiber tech certification. We're back and forth with them about setting up a smart classroom in our technical school and bringing in that program so we can start certifying people. Because I'll tell you right now, if you learn how to fiber splice right now, you're going to have a career for the rest of your life. Because the people doing it, there's not enough of them to go around. So we trained our electrical linemen how to do this. We're a little spoiled because we can go up in the electric space. We're using the ADSS fiber that doesn't conduct electricity. So we're up in our electrical space with our fiber, which is a benefit to us, and we own all the poles. So that is a benefit also, but that's no different than Intercounty Electric Cooperative or Osage or any other electric cooperative. We're doing the same thing they are, offering it to our customers, trying to provide a service, and using the things that are to our advantage to our, you know, and that's really important. I'll send you guys a white paper. George Washington University contacted me in their Masters in Public Administration program for the capstone program, a capstone project on rural internet with a focus of Indian reservation. It's a really good program that really focuses on rural options. I'll send that to you because they actually sent me a copy because I was on the interview for it. But it's a really strong, fact-based, research-based paper that will give you some interesting information. But I'm always available for questions. You, Lawson, and I talk weekly about this. I'm trying to get MQA more involved in the broadband stuff. But, you know, Houston's here to stay. And like I said, we're paying for it ourselves. We qualify for any grant money so far. We probably will end up using some of our ARPA money for that. But as of today, everything's been paid for with city money through the electric. And it's kind of the quick talk. I'm sure there's more I want to share, but I don't want to take up too much time. But I'm here for questions at any time. Just
Let's speed the conversation a little bit. My stock question number one is what impediments are there today at the statewide level that's stopping anybody providers doing their job for broadband resources?
you know, we actually have 5 internet providers that go through our town, and we only got 2 bids. Apparently the Houston fiber runs through Houston going to Fort Wood. I don't know how that works out. I'm not an engineer.
Department of Defense.
Yeah. So anyway, there's fiber there. 2 of them said, yeah, we'll give you a bid. We'll provide you the service. But nobody else did that. I think that's a major thing. I think Mr. Garner agreed. Getting that fiber connection is difficult too, sometimes pricey.
Yeah.
And
I think it'd be the ultimate deal to do, the correct way, but they're doing it correct. And in the amount of times they could. I think right now I need to put what tires you can get, what people can, the backfill.
But that fiber being provided into us, you know, the state can't become a fiber provider or an internet provider. You guys can't be the first mile. It just doesn't make sense in any aspect. But we have a lot of first mile companies in the state. And I think them stepping up and committing to this process will be beneficial also.
And what you were talking about too, making sure we don't have legislation that prohibits municipalities from providing that kind of business.
And like I said, you know, I want competition. Come compete with me. I'll be more than happy to put out this.
Unless they get the grant money to do it all.
That's not
where I'm
competition.
scared about.
Yeah, that's not competition. You know, taking federal dollars and putting somebody out of business is not what we're here for. We're here to provide that to those homes and to those small businesses. You know, Simmons Bank in Houston is gonna get internet from somebody, I guarantee it. Because everybody's gonna want to provide it. But like I said, that single mom with 3 kids all in school, who's providing?
You are.
I'm trying.
That's good. That's a great.
I'm aware of anything that the state legislators are doing is prohibiting the growth of internet in rural areas. I don't think it's an issue of states blocking anything from happening. It's from a business person's perspective, there's not a lot of ROI. So there's just not a lot of incentive for businesses to say, let's go do this. So I think that's the biggest prohibitive factor if you're looking for business community to solve this problem. You know, necessity is the mother of invention, right? And so probably the realtors will be the ones that want to solve this problem the most because they can't sell their properties without some sort of internet. But I don't know that the state's doing anything to block it out.
Well, and that's what I get too, because like what I was talking about earlier, with the federal government giving like a $50 credit to low-income families to get access. You could do the same thing with providers. Give providers a chunk of change to go out there and provide. All our co-ops, when they first started, they weren't designed to make money. Electricity was necessity. Now the internet has become a necessity as well. And we need to look at that. Yes.
So just to piggyback on that. So right now in the state of Missouri, it's illegal for me as a municipality to offer video, phone, or any other telecommunications with the exception of internet. In last legislative session, there was a bill introduced by the gentleman from our area that would have made it illegal for municipalities to be involved in internet. The internet would have been added. And that bill was defeated in committee.
The co-ops can offer, can't they? I mean, I think the co-ops are offering. They can
Yes.
offer.
And a lot of the
TV.
co-ops that continue operating, it just eliminated the municipalities. That was the bill.
Just speaking from the vantage point of being a legislator involved in some of this stuff, there are some subplots going on out there. Like, you know, and Senator Asmeyer can tell us the Senate is a really interesting place because they can drop amendments on each other out of nowhere. And it's like,
Every bill that comes through committee has an opportunity to be changed before it's on the floor. And once it's on the floor, it can be offered as a sub. So every time there's 2 chances for it to change each time.
I'll just be honest, lobbyists love the Senate because of the ability to shift on the fly like that. We do things in the House a little bit differently. I went over and watched something happen this year. I'm like, oh, that was really interesting. Good luck with that. Long story short, it didn't happen the way someone thought it should. Too bad, so sad. But when we're out there, folks are trying to knock other people out and say, oh, you can't participate in X, Y, Z. That's not competition is something that's healthy. We're a capitalist society, we can get to that. But at the same time, we want to make sure that public-private partnerships are something that we're doing everything we can to encourage. Get the private sector involved. It shouldn't be all government. The emergency funds we talk about are here today, gone tomorrow, next year. We don't know. You know, that's not a permanent fix. So the hot spots, we already had that conversation. Only as good as the signal it gets to. There are other issues with those as far as privacy. Are they secure? So there are all sorts of other issues. Another thing I hadn't mentioned earlier, Secretary Ashcroft has a pilot program dealing with public libraries. And took a look, there were 340 public libraries around the state, at least one in every county, and trying to put the ability to take tests. So workforce development standpoint, you need your industry certification. Go in, take your proctored exam at the public library. The second part is HIPAA compliant spaces for telemedicine. So is there any stigma attached to going in the front door of a mental health facility? Yes. You need stigma attached to going to the front door of a public library? No. So I mean, it's as simple as that. Why are we not making resources available already? We haven't. Something we can do? Yes. Is this something we should be encouraging? Yes. With more net basically it's already out there servicing these libraries, which have really good internet. Why are we not doing this? Because we haven't done it. So these are the type of things we hear from folks out here all over the state. You know, special needs, but programs, we're saying, oh, we're already doing something along these lines. Great. Thank you. But how do we make it better? We accelerate the process, we put the funding in your hands where you can get at it. And do wonderful things with it. We don't have to know everything that goes on. We just have to facilitate a process that encourages this. So if we can knock down a regulatory barrier, we'd love to do that. We can encourage public-private partnerships. That's good. Everybody solves this problem on their own. Get a hybrid solution here. Is that in a book anywhere? You figure it out yourself. That's what it's all about.
One of the challenges that I've noticed is this issue, and I mentioned that mapping is an issue. It always looks like these areas are served, but they're not. But speed is another question that, you know, I talk to everyone that calls our agency. They already have speeds up to 25 megabits with HughesNet, with Viasat, with whoever their current provider is. And we're offering speeds that are not necessarily that high, but we're offering 10,000 times better quality of product that they can actually do what they want to do. You know, they want to watch a YouTube video, they want to watch Netflix. They can't do it, even though they're getting these told that they're getting just what you were talking about. So, but we can offer a much smaller package. But if we are trying to then offer 25 megabits, I feel like we're going to be doing the same thing that everyone's hating right now, which is overselling the pipeline, or we have to buy such equipment to handle 25 megs to your house, 25 megs to your house, 25 megs to your house, 25 megs. When you use 2 and you use 1 and you use 1 and you use 5. I mean, but we have to do 25 to every household because that's what's required in these grants. People don't need 25 megabits at their house. We have 8. We have 8 who operate 3 televisions watching different programs all the time. And people are on YouTube, and we're having a meeting with Tim, our writer, and our cell phones are on it, and we have company with their
Well,
cell phones on it.
That's why we're trying to do this on the state, because that's what the feds
Every
are.
time they jump these speed requirements up, though,
I
that
could-
to
Well,
me
those-
is prohibitive.
I could have all the internet we wanted in the house. I said ours are customer packages, 6 to 8, go back and forth sometimes. Just to see what they're dealing with, so I know
Right.
what's going on in the real world.
And that's why too, those feds, we say they've got them set at this certain
Right,
amount.
but when you do the 25, 3, 4, area, so many houses, you got to spend all this money on this equipment. You know, it would be nice to have gig back in just if I spend all that money in 4 houses.
Right.
It's just,
So every
can't
time
do it.
those speed requirements jump, it makes, to me, it's
your price
prohibitive.
starts doubling. So when you're talking about spending, if we gotta do 25, 3 or another time to do the 100 megs, if we try to do that on these towers, it's that.
No.
Forget it.
And
It's just-
that's why I said too,
Because
those
if,
are,
and you said split the cost half and half, you can't do it. half and
well,
half.
and that's what I'm saying, those are some of the Fed requirements. for
Yeah.
that. And that's why we're just saying the heck with the
Those,
feds.
those are the Fed dollars.
Yeah.
So if we have a state solution, the state standard right now is 25.3.
Yeah.
And the feds are talking 100 symmetrical,
Yeah.
120 force Ks.
You can't do it.
It's recommended now, so pretty soon that'll be required. So in order to get at that particular window, there has to be some sort of assurance that speeds can be reached. What we've also dealt with is there's between advertised speed and actual speed.
Yep.
And Missouri, as late as 2 years ago, was 49th in the country in overall speed. That's really not where we need to be. So that's a problem that we're trying to address as well. Another thing to consider, looking down the road, when feds come in and they upgrade all this, whatever, the federal dollars are going to go in a particular direction. Folks like you are going to be outside looking in, trying to solve the problem. Again, that's where our state, the availability of state funds to say, hey, wait a minute, there's something over here that will help, will be huge. So that's why we go out to places like this, to talk to people who are doing this in real time, because your situation is radically different from somebody in St. Charles County. They got all the internet they need. They're fine. They don't have to worry about it. out here, we're talking no internet at all.
Yeah.
For some,
Talk to people every day.
2% of the state's still on dial-up.
And actually using what you guys are gonna be using, what we're talking about, it's gonna be better than some of these places that supposedly do have. You know, we talked to people in Columbia, Justin City, that are supposed to be getting all this great access and do not. So and that's what Lewis just said, that's why we're coming out and doing this. So we're just saying, heck with the feds, what can we do on the state?
I don't know, if Senator got the phone calls, or Travis got phone calls, I got phone calls in this pandemic from businesses in the city of Animal who had really good internet. And the complaint was, my internet isn't doing what it's supposed to every day. And got in contact with EBD, I'm also vice chair of economic development, so I talked to them a lot. And said, what on earth is going on with our broadband access? They came back, about a week later, it's 40–45% during business hours, 8 to 5, 40–45% of all the internet in the state is being soaked up by Netflix and YouTube.
Because everybody's home. I got.
Everybody's home.
Yeah.
YouTube, where we're going to give YouTube a pass, or flip classrooms. Some of the folks out there, or the kids, were actually using YouTube for their lessons. I get that. Not all of them by any stretch, but Netflix was, nobody saw that coming. Nobody. So now we know when people flip that switch, this is going to be a problem. Everything in that pipeline is going to be maxed out. And I've also talked to folks, had to wait till 2 or 3 in the morning to have enough internet in really nice neighborhoods, because the neighbors' kids were doing first-person shooter games till low dark 30 and trying to get their work done for them if they can. And so that's a problem everywhere.
That's what I asked about. All this happening, we're seeing all parts.
Yeah, and that's what I meant. This is actually an opportunity for people in this area will have better internet access and usage than what they have.
It's the word reliable. And that's what we heard from the superintendent. It's there, but is it dependable enough in a crunch? How do we solve it?
That's why we got in, that's why I got into it. I got so tired of Friday night, internet 7 o'clock. Weekend would have internet, and Monday to pick back up. And that's, we got into it, working Friday night, weekends, whatever. It'll be up to
Part of how we do that, sell smaller speed packages that give you what you need to get your work done. They're not exorbitant packages. And we don't oversell it. We don't sell it at 250% like a lot of other carriers. So, but we want to continue to do that. And when we get grants that require your speeds to be 25 and 125 and higher, that is going to put us out. We don't want to be the carrier that pretends to give you speeds up to 125, but you're actually getting 1 at your house. Because that does not interest us. We've already been down that road. We're doing these because we have been in that spot for a long time.
Make sure we're speaking our best time. Anybody who hasn't spoken yet wanted to step up. I have a question also that we ask at these hearings. What questions do you have for us? So we have our senator, 2 state reps. What questions do you have for us that I hope we can answer?
We went to the county commissioners, both in Ozark County and Douglas County, and we have talked to them about using CARES Act money. There's something more that we could do. They did say they're waiting for that second round of stuff. Should we be approaching them a second time? Should we be taking our state
Yes.
representative with us? There's suggestions
Yes, and
about
yes.
talking to our commissioners.
Suggestion, well, I'm going to start and Travis going to. Senator, we'll jump into it. I actually had a provider in front of me, Rawls County, I'll just say who it was. And Rawls County commissioners, Shelby County commissioners took the CARES Act money and they plowed it into broadband. Here's the question I guess. Has the FBI arrested you yet? No. Has the FBI seized any of your assets? Has the FBI taken your firstborn child? Has the FBI frog marched you? Has anybody from the federal government asked you money back? No, no, no. And what I'm getting from folks is, in a hurry yesterday. Well, we're waiting for final guidance. You know, the feds moved the goalposts, they do things. They did. But they're not gonna do it with broadband. I'm sorry, it's just not realistic. Oh, yeah, we're gonna take that piece off the board when we're all obsessed with it. We know, you're not in the 21st century if you don't have it. You're just not. Your quality of life is not where it needs to be without this. It's the same thing we talked about in the 30s with electricity. You know, I think the federal government basically say you're gonna do this. Because utility companies say, oh, there's no money there. Yes, there is. But the other side of that piece was we forget was you had to pay the $5 to run it from the pole to your house. So people had skin in the game. That's what the state fund is designed to do. There's your skin in the game. It's 50-50. You put money out, you get money back. So we have strategies in place at the statewide level already, but this is 2018. We just basically need to amp this up. So what I'm telling commissioners is, I tell them all, talk to Glen Egan, Shelby County, talk to Wiley Hayward and Rawls County. They're both still free people. They're both out walking around. The FBI has not come for them. And they took the CARES Act money and they did something. And a lot of counties already have their checks filed. In Marion County, we had a process where the committee got together, University Extension was in the middle of that, so how do we prioritize our needs? You're gonna see a lot of folks go, well, you know, we need dump trucks. I get that, you did. But here's what you also need is broadband internet. I don't care how you get it there, just get it now.
Can't bring in taxes, which I don't pay for another company.
But crying out loud, and you tell them, you know, I got an online education problem. 23% of all the kids in Missouri today, K through 12, do not have dependable internet. 1 out of every 4. And you know, a lot of them are right here. Give me their names. Don't. That's a problem. The other thing is telehealth. You really want your seniors in the midst of a pandemic or cold and flu season getting sicker. Well, they don't have to. I'm talking to people sitting there, not at the end of a gravel road, but sitting on a state road with a trunk line from a provider in their front yard. You didn't have enough bandwidth to dial up a doctor for a Zoom meeting. And the gentleman's housebound in his 80s and his wife's in her 80s too. Had to get him out, put him in the vehicle, taking the distance, and walking into an area in a hospital where there are other sick people. Why are we doing this? Because they just don't have the capacity. Can counties play a huge role in this? Absolutely. Have they? Some, yes. Should they all? My personal opinion, yes. Why not? Well, we're waiting for the feds to give us final guidance. I'm a lawyer too. Sorry, it's true. Lawyers can find 1,001 reasons, just don't do that. I'm not so good at saying, yeah, it's okay. We're gonna move this thing forward, don't worry about it. I'm telling you, don't worry about it. Feds are gonna move the goalposts. I think people in DC all the time. It's a priority. They get it. They've actually relaxed the standard from the CARES Act, which was darn near physically impossible for folks to get the stuff out by the end of the year. They listened. Well, you know, that was a bad idea. Let's move it out to 2024 to get your ducks around 2026 to get the money out. A 5-year fuse, as opposed to by the end of the calendar year. That's progress. They're making progress on census block methodology, walking away from that and saying, yeah, it was fun while it lasted. It wasn't. You go into a community standard, which is what we're talking about right here. People getting together like we are today saying, hey, wait a minute. This subdivision doesn't have it, this group, whatever. That's what this is all about. They are moving in that direction at the federal level. Hallelujah, where you been? So we're seeing some really good changes, dare I say it, at the federal level. The maps they haven't figured out yet. God bless them, they're fine, but it's not happening. We're gonna have to do that instead. We have resources already out there doing it. We just need to marry them up. But at the end of the day, counties are going to have a huge part to play in this if they choose to do so. Cities also, talk to folks in the municipal space. Yeah, the money's out. What are we going to do with that? Well, we got sewer, we got water, we got this, we got that, lots of stuff. Huge infrastructure problems. I understand that. That stuff, you know, we still got, sewer areas that they're braced by wood. We're going back 150 years in our infrastructure. Well, that's not good. I understand why that's happening. Counties don't have that kind of infrastructure. They got roads and bridges. State money, federal money, all that kind of stuff. Why are we not doing this as a county? I don't know. It's me, I'm not a commissioner. But I'm telling everybody I talk to, all those two gentlemen, they will tell you all about it. And they're still free. The FBI has not carted them away. So, and I told them, I'm telling everybody, like, do it. Call us. We're happy to talk about it. We did it.
And I will answer this on that. We've only asked them for 10%. Okay, Douglas County's getting 2.5 million, so we're asking for 250,000. Ozark County's getting 1.9 million, so we're asking for 190,000 from that. Granted, what Lewis is saying, that they need money. Right now, Douglas County has $22,000 left for the whole year in a slush fund. They have a greater breakdown or whatnot. It's done, but asking for 10% is very reasonable. And that's why we want to have meetings like this, is to let people know. So you all know, tell your county commissioners, this is very important that we get this done. If we were asking for half of it, which we really should be, because what Lewis just said, we've got money for the roads and bridges, that'd be more. So asking 10%, I think is more than reasonable. So the answer to your question is yes, you need to talk to them, but it's also my job to go talk to them too and make sure we get this
Have
done.
your FFA chapter go talk to you. That's where the rubber meets the road. I'm serious. It's all right. The FFA walks in the building, they wear the jackets, we listen to them. Why? We're the present, they're the future. That's what it's about. We're trying to get this thing done so kids, grandkids, whatever, state, whatever.
Who are the city county commissioners that you mentioned? That
Glenn Egan and Shelby, Wiley Hibbert and Rawls. Presiding commissioners of,
And I apologize. I appreciate everybody coming out today. I'm supposed to be at Forsyth. So thank you. I appreciate you guys. Does anybody have any questions for me before I take off? No.
You want to,
It's Cheryl. She called me and said, you're supposed to be over there at noon. She wanted me to bring 200 Missouri flags.
There you go.
we don't have 200 Missouri flags in the whole building right now.
Yeah, we have 2 of them in our office. So thank you all for coming out today. I appreciate it very much. I apologize for leaving.
You know, before this, and I don't want to put Chris on, of course, she took the extension, and the extension does youth services. So that you talk about the FFA jackets, and those folks with 4-H and are also, we have a lot of homeschoolers that are engaged in 4-H and other activities. And that's just a whole other community of people that really,
Yes, they did.
you can have a resolution in your hand, ready to roll on.
Yeah.
Senator, from your standpoint, you hear from a lot of the same people. We hear from Travis and I are in the same suite, by the way. It's 2 doors down from me, so we can talk a lot. But from your vantage point, you've got how many commissioners? 8 counties,
I have
24
8
commissioners.
counties, 24, or, sometimes dividing into east and west. What I hear is, one, they truly want to be good shepherds of whatever dollar comes in the door. They do. They don't want to have to repay something. I think some of the nervousness or the hesitancy to commit is they want to be assured that it's going to be okay. And there's not been good guide come out of the what the U.S. the feds as to what they can and cannot use the dollars for. And there's also what I've noticed in my 33rd district is there are people who are very reluctant to trust the federal government. And so they are, thinking, yeah, sure, you're going to tell me it's okay, but I know how this fed, how they work. And so there's just that hesitancy. It's the, they're charged with a huge task. They want to do a good job. And I think what we can do is to provide them with that assurance of, this will be okay. This is where you can invest the dollars, and make sure that they feel like they're being fair with the dollar, to where it's not a particular vendor. I absolutely love Mike Berger, and I really want his work to be successful. But there might be some other vendors out there, other folks, and they want to have some kind of good rubric or a rationale as to why we invest here, here, and here. So I think really it's just support around those folks. to make sure that they are very comfortable with the decisions they have to make. I've engaged with probably half the counties on this topic with those commissions. And that's the kind of thing I'm hearing across the board. I do think they want to do a good job. I'm not sure if all of them have the same passion for internet connectivity as other people. And that might be part of the hesitancy too. You know, they haven't lived it all their lives. They don't understand that it's a big deal. And so I think it's educating, supporting, and providing that good connection with somebody with the right answers as to can I do this, can I not? And I think there's a little bit of misstep there, especially with the third on this part. But the work you're doing, Representative, and with Representative Smith, I think is really opening people's eyes and people having a better understanding of what's possible. I know that Tim is doing a great job. I really want to see some regional support there for each region to have eyes on, to understand the problem in that area, to be able to solution those problems in that area. And Tim can't do it across the state. He can look at the overall, but he can't do it across the state himself.
Just to do a shout out for EED, because I deal with them all the time, but Rob Dixon walked in there with the express intent of blowing up his department. And he did. He just blew it to smithereens. About 80% of his workforce was someplace else. He said, our core function is attracting business, recruiting business, keeping business, and expanding business. That's it. That's what we did.
Yeah.
And to that end, we used to have one person the entire state who did rural. Good friend of mine, great guy. We spread him so thin. When Rob came in, he basically said, we're going to set up teams all over the state. And North Missouri has a team, and the 2 people on that team are lights out. Everybody knows them. One of my tells us, you can't, retirement is, you can't retire for another 5 years. I mean, all right, they're just that good. So we have some resources in place already. Where folks are out there, they're beating the bushes every day, they're in all these types of meetings. They know what's going on. Grasshoppers in their ears are so close to the ground. So I mean, we've got some really good resource partners to work with. The question is, how do we, at the statewide level, facilitate a process that's already there? So how do we draw in our university extension folks? We do it through Columbia, through Marshall Stewart, who's been another lights out individual on this since he got to this state. We've got some fantastic people out there at the right place at the right time. We just need to give them the tools to get the job done. And all hands on deck. Municipalities are part of this conversation. Counties are part of this conversation, not just us. And I learned this, when I was in my 20s working for a congressman up in Illinois, 21 counties. Every county creates its own weather. Every county is different. Every place is unique. I also learned that the folks in DC are only as good as what the folks out in the district tell them. Because they're in DC. They have no idea what's going on out here. Same thing for us. We're only as good as what we hear from folks like you. That's why it's so encouraging to see turnout like this, to hear these stories, to hear from providers actually out there solving a problem today. Not waiting around saying, oh, gee, here's a green light. Just do it. That's something we're at, it's George Patton called the unforgiving minute. Once it's gone, it's gone. We're here. This is the unforgiving minute. This money coming down to us from DC is once in a lifetime. You've got to make this right. With one chance to do it, here we are. So with that, are there any further questions?
I just have one question.
Sure.
You mentioned that, the FBI didn't show up and they didn't make you do the frog march.
Frog
I had no
march.
clue.
That's,
Were they?
They
go ahead, if you want to demonstrate it.
You said frog hop. I had in my hand kind of what that looked like. I guess it's a squat jump kind of thing. Anyway, I'm just
With
teasing.
handcuffs and,
Where you get marched in front of everyone in handcuffs, humiliated.
Ah, that's it.
Yes,
Well,
you
thank
go out in handcuffs and the news media is there,
Scrunch
Yes.
up a little
I
bit.
guess. Just teasing.
Thank you for clarifying. We learned something new.
I like grasshoppers in their ears, because they're so close.
I
gotta
don't remember
that one.
analogies that
I
you
like that.
You've got lots of.
Well, I want to say thank you all again for out today, and whatever you got, please send it to us, any case studies, that kind of thing. We put that in the report. And I said it before, I want to underscore the importance of a report. It's a document that people read, comprehend, but the rubber meets the road at the action steps. So the recommendations, my plan is to take our November committee meeting and basically walk through what we've heard. The shell report, the report itself isn't due until the end of the year, but I want to have something in place where we have actionable items on December 1, which is when we can begin pre-filing for the House of Representatives. We have access to the House drafting staff. October meeting, we want to basically go into areas we haven't really discussed as fully as we probably should. We have a couple ideas of what that's going to look like now. But December 1st rolls around, we want to be in a position to say, these are some things we need to jump on right this. Get that out there in 2022 legislation. So when we have folks like Senator Esslinger over on the other side of the building, you know, who we can go to, who we can trust, who gets it. Because she hears it every day, just like I hear it. So she hears it from more people probably than I, bigger district. But this is something that we understand what the needs are, what we want to do is put the pieces of the puzzle together to make something that everything fits. So folks out there in that space don't have to worry about us in Jefferson City getting in the way of what you're going to do. Make sure that every stakeholder who wants to be heard has been heard, that we analyze what we hear, what we see, in such a way that we're going to turn that into legislation that makes sense this year, next year, and for the foreseeable future. So to that end, I want to thank everybody. If you have any questions, concerns, I think everybody got my business card. That's my legislative email. Anything that you want to send it, you can send it over that legislative email, any document. We can collate those through my office, get that in the committee. The report, the shell, we're in the process, we're going to stand that up very future. So we know what that's going to look like as far as basically chapter and verse. The materials themselves, we're going to collect up until the last possible minute. Make sure as much of this in there as possible. So, the other,
Good. Kind of a cool thing for, you know, chair of economic development. Have a talk about this in the county, even right here. Thank you.
thank y'all. I don't have a gavel, so we'll just say.
Bam.
Bam.